Hello, Internet. Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset. Taliesin and Evertel's wondrous wisdom show in a week, where there is only one thing to talk about. And no, it's not that charged bolts are getting nerfed by 60% in possibly the greatest shock in World of Warcraft history. No, it is the reveal of patch 11.2, Ghosts of K'aresh, and the final boss of the War Within expansion, Dimensius, the all-devouring. He's bigger than Stormwind. Did you know he's bigger than Stormwind, though? Well, he is. Man, I'm so ready to get devoured right now. Yes, it's the patch and final boss that we predicted before the expansion even launched, and which I know you've read and watched and heard all about by now, so this is not an announcement recap video. That's boring anyway. No, one reason this episode is a day or so late is because we have been playing the absolute life out of this PTR. We've devoured it to find out what all those things you've heard about actually are and how they work. And I think we're in the position now where we can actually answer some of the big and important questions that you have about the patch. These questions to be exact, and don't worry, because story-wise, this is going to be a completely spoiler-free zone. No spoiler bots of any description needed this episode. You are safe. So good. Here are the answers to some of the biggest questions about patch 11.1.2, Ghosts of K'aresh.
Is the new dungeon set after the raid?
Ooh, that's a good question, yeah. Interviews have suggested that the new dungeon, Ecodome Aldari, is indeed set after the events of the Manaforge Omega raid. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, wow, Tally, Manaforce Omega is like the most Final Fantasy-ass sounding name I've ever heard in WoW, and you're right, it is. But you're probably also thinking, well, hang on a minute, Tally. The dungeon launches on day 1 of Ghosts of K'aresh. The raid and Season 2 opens the week after. Doesn't that mean that playing through the dungeon will totally ruin the ending of the raid and therefore basically the expansion? Didn't you tell me this was going to be a spoiler-free zone, Tally? That's a valid concern. One that I also shared when I heard that interview, and so it was with great excitement and trepidation that I blagged my way into a dungeon group on the PTR to see for myself if indeed that would be the case. And in hindsight, it might not be too surprising that actually, no, Ecodome Aldani does not in fact ruin the ending of the raid. Locust Walker doesn't pop up halfway through and say, wow, what an amazing fight against Dimensius that was. I can't believe Valeria sacrificed herself to save us all, and we have a third Demon Hunter spec now. But that doesn't mean that there aren't some very interesting threads in that dungeon, though. For a start, you might think from the presentation that Ecodome Aldani is set in one of the ecodomes around K'aresh. Classic multi-use recycling content like Operation Floodgate, basically 50% of the dungeons in Dragonflight, and, well, Tazavesh now too. But actually no, Aldani is not part of the playable K'aresh zone, repurposed as the boss instance, taking place instead on a completely new landmass, which I feel should definitely be visible from the playable K'aresh zone, but isn't. Anyway, it's the site of the Sacred Temple of the Oracles, a faction of K'areshi who, before the Great Devouring turned everyone into Ethereals, worshipped the World Soul and were oath-sworn to obey the Nexus King. We have some cool story with the Oracles in the campaign quests, which I won't spoil obviously, but basically Venari built this ecodome on the site of their ancient and sacred temple, which is why they're a bit pissed off and want to destroy it. So the dungeon doesn't spoil any of the events of the raid because it's essentially completely disconnected from it. It's a whole different narrative arc getting concluded here. And trust me, I tried, okay? The poor people that had to run that dungeon with me did not have a good time. I stopped every 5 seconds to look around for any clues or hints as to what might happen in Manaforge Omega. I even carefully studied the Broken Planet skybox for any changes or anything, but there was nothing. Except at the very end of the dungeon, which didn't help me work out the raid ending, but was very unexpected and cool. I've already said too much. Is the zone a bit small?
How does K'aresh compare to other final patch zones? You might think that's a silly thing to ask, really, since each new patch zone should be judged on its own merits and on a case-by-case basis. We should ask, is the zone right for the story it is trying to tell, rather than, is it big though? It's not the size that counts, it's what you do with it. Something that I tell Tally all the time, but this time, I really mean it. But that, how big is the zone? It's much smaller than Argus and Legion, the patch that it undoubtedly shares the most with thematically. Also Breezy put out a side-by-side showing that it's considerably smaller than the Emerald Dream Zone in Dragonflight 2. And on top of the entire zone footprint being smaller, don't forget about a third of the entire zone is like literally space. The empty void in between the ruined islands that make up the playable area. And honestly, I wouldn't blame you if you were panicking right now about our new itty-bitty tiny new final patch zone, of which a not insignificant portion is a recycled dungeon city. But don't forget, I've actually played the shit out of this PTR now, so hear me out. It feels plenty big. The ruins of K'aresh might be physically less than the Emerald Dream, but it's such a desolate, arid, and hopeless feeling use of negative space that it absolutely captures what it's going for. This feels like a ruined world. People have called this a void patch, and like we fight a Void Lord, you know, so I get it, but honestly, it feels way more like an arcane dune than anything else. It's a forbidding desert landscape with areas of void ice caused by, I shit you not, void meteors that keep smashing into it, all played out under the genuinely oppressive shadow of the swirly destroyed planet, with relieving patches of luscious green life in the ecodomes. It's not a high-functioning homeworld of a galactic army like Legion. What it actually feels like is the most empty and desolate parts of Outland, which I'm guessing is exactly what they were going for. It's lonely feeling in the way Hellfire Peninsula or Netherstorm was. Honestly, I don't think there's anything in WoW that feels like K'aresh, and its size works perfectly for it from what I've played. Plus, I don't think we've talked quite enough about how stunning that backdrop is. I played loads of PTR one day and then didn't log in for a day, and then when I came back, it blew my mind all over again. To get all mid-2000s for a second, it feels epic. And that's exactly what you want from an expansion climax. Is there a new Demon Hunter 3rd spec?
Oh man, you know we had to talk about this. And yeah, we're doing it before we talk about RESHII Wraps or phase diving or anything else. Wowhead released an article on the possible 3rd Demon Hunter spec within literally minutes of the patch announcement. Belilar put out a video which, if it was also somehow telling Blizz that we need to talk, would be the most Belilar video ever made. Is there going to be a new 3rd Demon Hunter spec introduced in 11.2? What is the evidence? I'm not going to lie to you on this, fam. There's not much, but what we have is fairly compelling, for sure. So with no bombast, no exaggeration, here is literally everything that has sparked this conversation. Exhibit 1. One of the bosses in the Manaforge Omega is a voidy demon hunter. Like a demon hunter, but voidy, as opposed to Felly. And like, yeah, demon hunters already use a fair bit of shadow and void stuff anyway, but Adaris Duskblade is like more voidy, okay? I think if this is all there was, then I would be pretty confident saying that there is no actual evidence at all, to be honest. In Dragonflight, we fought raid bosses that were Night Elf Shaman and Druids of the Flame. Do we now have playable Night Elf Shaman and Druids of the Flame? No. We don't. A unique thing existing as a raid boss does not mean that we will get it as a playable class or spec, unfortunately. But the thing is, this is not all there is. Exhibit 2. One of the side quests in K'aresh is a common cause where you team up with Leona Darkstrider to help Adaris Duskblade, the boss, become the voidy shadow demon hunter that we then fight in raid. And the setup for this is super interesting. The Void Elf, Leona, and Adaris have agreed to basically teach each other each other's power. She'll teach him Void stuff, he'll teach her Demon Hunter stuff. Yeah, I know, I'm thinking it too, give me a minute. And it doesn't really work out too well for either of them in the end, but that is not the point. The point is that Blizz have taken the trouble to put in a substantial quest line about how a Demon Hunter becomes all voidy. And yes, it's true, it seems like we're probably going to kill the one existing Shadow Demon Hunter in the raid, at which point there will be canonically no Shadow Demon Hunters again, but Blizz have announced that that particular raid boss is completely optional, or at least as optional as a boss that drops tier can be. What I'm saying is you don't technically have to kill Adorus to complete this raid, so canonically he could survive, or even wilder, perhaps defeating him in that casual, I don't even care about the tier gear, it's just about the challenge way, could perhaps be part of the unlock requirements for actually playing as the third Demon Hunter spec. That is kind of wild speculation, granted, and I don't blame you if you are unconvinced. So may I introduce you to Exhibit 3, the Datamined Void-themed Metamorphosis model, which is all purple though, and the Voidy-themed Metamorphosis icon to go with it. And yes, it's true, these could be from the raid fight, which is coming up in 11.2 against Adarus Duskblade, who is a Voidy Shadow Demon Hunter, and therefore logically would have these abilities, but also they could totally be for players too, right? I can tell you are still unconvinced, so let me blow your mind with Exhibit 4. There is no Exhibit 4, that's all we've got, but are you not entertained? I mean, convinced? Now here's the thing. I don't really think there's much evidence for the supposed Demon Hunter spec, honestly, but I do kind of think there might be one coming, because actually the most convincing evidence for me is just how much people like Wowhead and Bell are talking about it with seemingly so little evidence. Like, they seem incredibly convinced. I mean, I only looked at the thumbnail of Bell's vid, but I mean, that seems convinced, right? And no joke, the fact that they are willing to speculate so hard on such meager evidence genuinely makes me wonder if those guys all know something that I don't. And that is completely possible. I basically know nothing. So I am not ruling this out. Since Dragonflight, we do now have a precedent of new specs being introduced in expansions. This could definitely happen. Just based on this evidence, I think the most likely thing that's going to happen is that Void Elves are allowed to become Demon Hunters, with all the cool new Voidy customizations that would bring, including a cool shadowy Void Metamorphosis most likely. But I don't know, Wowhead seemed very excited. We are linking that article and some others we think you'll find interesting in the description of this video for you to have a look at and make up your own mind. Genuinely, let us know what you think in the comments here, okay? Convince me this is going to happen. Does recycling Tazavesh feel cheap?
I know that when Tazavesh was revealed as the new Dalaran, i.e. a traveling city that plonks itself in the center of the action and works as a player hub that Blizz doesn't have to bother making because they already made it for a different expansion a few years ago, I felt a twinge of not disappointment so much as deep suspicion that Blizz were being super lazy and fobbing us off with recycled content made to look like new stuff. Like, oh yeah, here's some rocks and the player hub equivalent of Horrific Visions. See you guys in midnight. I'm pretty sure a few of you had that feeling too. And I can only speak for myself here, okay? And I'm also only speaking for the hub city and not the dungeon, but I actually really like it. It works because we never got an uninstanced version of K'aresh before. It was an incredibly rich and detailed environment full of weirdly unique assets that Blizz literally told you to dash through as quickly as possible without taking any of it in to time your Shadowlands Season 3 Mythic Plus key. So to have this big city actually be a big city is actually really cool. And they utilize it well too, with lots of questing and daily and weekly pickups and portals. There are portals to every War Within delve in K'aresh now, which is pretty awesome. I think people will feel at home here, especially once they unlock the new Warband camp screen set in the Veiled Market, which we know is there, but which we don't have an image for yet. I'm guessing it's going to look a bit like this. After some time on the PTR, I'm basically won over. I feel like using Tazavesh as a hub was a really good call. There is a caveat to this, mind you. I can't guarantee I'm going to feel the same about this place after an entire season of not just having it as a hub, but also as a part of the Mythic Plus rotation, because that is a lot of Tazavesh, frankly. And it leads us on very nicely to our next question. Is Season 3 a bit shit?
Yeah, looks a bit shit, doesn't it? Okay, look, I'm sorry, I'm no Mythic Plus expert, okay? I am 3,300 rating on my main, which puts me in like the 98th percentile of Mythic Plus players worldwide, but I'm not afraid to admit, I don't understand what's going on half the time. I've spent the last 13 years specifically playing a class that doesn't have an interrupt, so I don't have to bother with all that shit, okay? Quasi is going to tell you whether this is a really good Mythic Plus dungeon pool, but you asked me my opinion, and when I say you, I mean pretend you that I made up to ask the question for this video, so I'm going to answer. I look at the Season 3 Mythic Plus pool and I don't feel disappointment, I feel literal rage. I think we were all expecting the Tazavesh half of the Tazavesh Mega Dungeon. That makes sense for the themes of the patch. But both parts? We have to do like the timey-wimey half for the third time too? Why? Seat of the Triumvirate was right there, Blizz. A cool Legion dungeon all about Alleria and Locust Walker and the Ethereals, which was a Mythic Plus dungeon in Legion, but has never made a repeat appearance since. And instead, you're giving us both parts of K'aresh again, and another Shadowlands dungeon? Look, I know I get a bit over the top about my Shadowlands despair, but come on, seriously, when you played through the new lore walking quests last week and they sent you to Oribos, tell me that you were absolutely fine with that. You can't, can you? Because when those quests sent you to Oribos, that place made you feel a little bit sad in a way you couldn't explain, didn't it? That's the Shadowlands effect. And guess what? There are almost as many Shadowlands dungeons in Season 3 as there are War Within dungeons. There will now have been 7 Shadowlands dungeons in War Within Mythic Plus seasons, or 1 less dungeon than War Within launched with. I accept I'm probably being a massive dick about this, because I am a massive dick. And actually, I genuinely think Mythic Plus is in a great place right now, even more so with the introduction of dungeon waystones in 11.2, which work as checkpoints, so you always know where you'll respawn if you die and release in the year of 2025. Amazing. So I hope I'm proved wrong and everyone laughs at me, but this list did not spark joy. I am looking forward to Algari though, and Dawnbreaker and Floodgate are legit 2 of my favourite dungeons ever. So you know what? I'm coming round to it actually, to some of it. Ignore me. Is it an ethereal patch or a broker patch?
A comment I've seen quite a lot online since the launch of the PTR is that this is, in fact, not the ethereal patch that we were expecting at all, but actually a broker patch. The hub is Tazavesh, after all. The eco-domes that dot the landscape are built by Venari and maintained by your broker buddies. On the face of it, yeah, the actual classic bandagey space mummies are playing second fiddle to their mech suit brothers and sisters here. We fight a lot of ethereals, specifically Shadow Guard, but the classic ethereal factions like the Protectorate, the Consortium, and the Ethereum are either completely missing or basically missing. But to say this is a broker patch rather than an ethereal patch is unfair, I think. The only remaining native inhabitants of these rocks are the various tribes of wastelanders, who we see plenty of, and it's really cool seeing what life has been like for those ethereals not powerful or important enough to travel through space and dimensions like all the ones we've met previously have been able to do. These are desperate Mad Max style ethereals fighting for their lives. We talked about the oracles earlier, and they're really important for sure. There's also the Nakroan, who have spent the last 10,000 years or so worshipping Xalatath. So obviously, yeah, I feel great affinity to them. But more importantly, the ethereals are absolutely integral to the main story in a way that makes them feel central. I don't want this to be a spoiler video, and man, there are some awesome spoilers I'm going to talk about in future, very clearly marked spoiler videos in the next week. But in the campaign, we learn about exactly how the ethereals became the ethereals, and it's genuinely genuinely juicy, moist lore orgy all over my face. I love it. This is the Ethereal patch. You know, it suddenly occurs to me that we haven't really spoken about the advertised features of this patch. We'd better do that. What is phase diving, and is the artifact cloak as obnoxious as it sounds?
Ah yes, the RESHII Wraps, the upgradeable player power MacGuffin of 11.2. I think the ill-advised use of the word artifact when describing the new RESHII Wrap cloak in the Blizz reveal made everyone do a little bit of sick in their mouths, because it conjured images of some kind of endless grind over multiple weeks to get the cloak to a level that is even usable or fun. The main player power associated with the cloak, initially at least, is an accompanying proc effect based on your role. So damage if you're DPS, a protection shield for tanks, or some random heals thrown out if you're a healer, you know the kind of thing. And fibers, which work like gems in a socket and allow you to choose the secondary stat that the cloak has. So far so good. The cloak is item level 701 when you're first given it, so it must be upgradable, and the implication is that this will be done through weekly capstone quests, which will also have their own story going on and may involve you doing other types of content like mythic dungeons or delves. So yeah, time-gated upgrades over multiple weeks. What's not to love? And you might also feel the slight taste of sick in your mouth right now, but ignore that, that's fine. That's not the only way to upgrade the power of the cloak either. There is a raid renown track for Manaforge Omega, and one of the rewards on that track will increase the cloak's effect while in the raid, as well as shoes in all armor types that drop from the raid that double the proc effect from the cloak, and a ring that interacts with it too. I would say that for me at least, my enjoyment of this upgrade process is going to depend quite a lot on how engaging that story that goes with it is. We'll have to see. But we haven't even mentioned the actual feature that cloak allows you to take part in: phase diving. Pads dotted around the zone let you enter nether space, just like a real life ethereal, which is an alternate version of the zone with different enemies, objectives, world quests, and secrets. I ran around for quite a few hours and found a couple of treasures, including one especially cool one which involved you reuniting some ghostly brothers. I found a book to read that didn't exist in the Outer Realm, and a few bosses too, including a giant dragon called RESHII, who swooped in and absolutely flattened me. I'm guessing he's like the world boss. It was scary and I liked it. There is also a talent tree related specifically to phase diving, like the Hourglass of Horrific Visions, I guess. The first upgrade lets you use phase diving pads in delves, or maybe just the new delve, that's unclear right now. The second upgrade gives you a damage proc specifically when you're in nether space. The third lets you see phased items in the normal world, and the last current upgrade unlocks the cool related 3-part transmog set. Oh, and that reminds me, do we get playable ethereal?
No, never. Sorry. But there are some absolutely wonderful ethereal transmogs in this patch. Not in the raid, that's its own thing, and we'll be ranking the tier sets in a separate video as usual. But the RESHII Wraps and the outdoor sets in 11.2 are absolutely incredible and tick every glowy arcane mummy box I could have possibly asked for in all their different recolored glory, especially the cloth set, which is very fitting. What's the whole farmville thing?
Okay, yeah, so people saw the presentation and they kind of talked about a thing where you bring species from all around Azeroth into the Ecodome to repopulate the fauna of K'aresh, and in some parts of the community that seems to have become like there's a Farmville or Stardew Valley thing going on in Ghosts of K'aresh, and that's not 100% untrue, but also that's not really what it is. Ecological Succession is basically the K'aresh world event. It appears on the map with a world event style marker with a little horn on it, and you get a wriggling box for completing it every week, which is the K'aresh version of the standard world event cache like you get from the theatre event or whatever. That, however, is to do Ecological Succession a disservice, because the gameplay here is way more involved and cumulative than any world event in War Within. It took me 51 minutes to complete all the intro quests and introduce bees into the Oasis Ecodome, and the achievements tab suggests that there's another 7 such quest lines which will unlock, presumably weekly, to introduce other varieties into the dome over the life of the patch. And it seems like each of those species will have their own world quests that become available available once they're in the dome, and you have to complete enough of these world quests for each species to fully integrate them over time. It's a lot of work, and if the bee quests are anything to go by, it is very chill work. Collecting honey, taking photos of them, tagging them, basically the exact opposite vibe from the universe-ending shenanigans of the main questline. And you probably already know how you feel about that either way. Personally, I really enjoyed my hour or so helping the bees, and I can see myself getting about halfway through all of the ecological succession stuff before getting distracted by something else and leaving it as a half-full bar until I literally die. That's not a criticism, I think it's cool, I just know how I interact with content.
Another new feature I remember being mentioned was warrants, but I wasn't really listening, sorry.
Oh yeah, I did this as well. It's basically just a weekly notice board in Tazavesh that tells you to go out and kill one of the elites in the zone, or maybe in nether space. But it's a bit more involved. The one I did was Grubber, and I had to go and do quests for 3 different NPCs to get the stuff that I needed to make a lure so I could summon him so I could kill him. It was fun, but nothing groundbreaking. It was cool. I'm sure there are many other questions you have that I may or may not have answers to. Maybe join us on Twitch during the week or on the podcast every Thursday on this channel to ask. But no doubt even more will be unfolding this week and as the weeks go by. And we haven't even started talking about the big spoilers yet. Oh, I cannot wait to start talking about them. I'm especially interested to learn, for example, when the release date of this patch will be. Are they going to place it before or after Gamescom, which is where they're going to announce midnight? I guess after, but I'm sure we're going to find out soon. Oh, it's an exciting time. I love this part of the PCR, so thank you for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us, thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our work happen. And patrons, seriously, thank you, because without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evertel. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Bellular, and we need to talk.